In the US, you're taught how to get a job, how to borrow money, how to use a credit card, but no one teaches you how to think about money the right way. Not in school, not at work, and for most people, not even at home. So millions of Americans enter adulthood carrying the same dangerous belief that if they just work harder and make more money, everything will be fine. But reality tells a different story. Many people do earn more, and yet their anxiety around money only grows. Brad Weir is a financial advisor who has spent over 20 years sitting face-to-face with everyday American families, people with stable jobs, solid incomes, not reckless spenders, and still constantly stressed about money. What troubled him wasn't the balance in their bank accounts. It was a sentence he heard again and again over the years. "I did everything I was told, so why do I still feel insecure?" That's why his book, 10 Things Nobody Told Me About Money, isn't about getting rich fast. It's written from real mistakes, real regrets, and real lessons, the ones Brad wishes his clients had learned earlier before they spent decades trying to fix what went wrong. Because the problem isn't that you're not trying hard enough. The problem is that you've been doing money in an order that 90% of Americans were never warned was wrong. Part 1. High income won't save you if your spending is out of control. One of the most persistent beliefs in American society is this: if you make enough money, your financial problems will eventually disappear. We grow up with that familiar story: get a good education, land a good job, climb the income ladder, and at the end of it, you'll find security. But Brad Weir points out a reality he's seen repeat itself for more than 2 decades as a financial advisor. High income often exposes the problem, it rarely solves it. Because money doesn't change how you think, it only amplifies how you already live. If you can't control your spending when your income is low, then when your income rises, what grows isn't freedom, it's the scale of your mistakes. You stop worrying about the electric bill or gas money. Instead, you start worrying about bigger loans, bigger bills, and a lifestyle that becomes harder and harder to escape. Brad calls this the lifestyle upgrade trap, not because people are greedy, but because they believe one powerful sentence: "I deserve this." And they're not wrong. You do deserve it. The real problem is that you never stop to ask, what exactly do I deserve this for? Picture a scenario that feels very familiar in America. A suburban couple outside Chicago. Both have solid jobs. As their income rises, they move into a bigger house for more comfort, then a newer car for safety, then more expensive vacations because we work so hard all year. None of those decisions are wrong on their own, but together they create a life that requires a high income every single month just to maintain, not to move forward. And so, even though on paper they're earning more than ever, the feeling inside sounds like this: I can't afford to make a mistake. I can't afford to take a break. I can't afford to lose my job. Brad emphasizes that this isn't a math problem, it's a psychological one. When income goes up, very few people stop to ask, what is this expense actually buying me? Instead, they simply spend the way everyone else does. People in the same income bracket, the same social circle, the same lifestyle bubble. Or take a tech engineer in Austin, Texas, earning a 6-figure salary. From the outside, he's made it. But every month, nearly all of his income disappears into a luxury apartment, a leased car, subscriptions he rarely uses, and expensive dinners just to keep up relationships. He isn't poor, but he's trapped. Brad calls this state financial fragility. You can earn a lot of money, but one small disruption, a few months without work, a health issue, an economic downturn, and the entire system you've built begins to crack. What's scary is that most people in this situation aren't reckless spenders. They simply never designed their spending around freedom. Brad Weir argues that financial freedom doesn't begin with earning more money. It begins with defining a good enough lifestyle and intentionally refusing to go beyond it even when your income allows you to. The gap between what you earn and what you actually need is where freedom is born. Someone with average income and strong spending control often has more real choices than someone with a high income living at the edge of their own limits. Because in the end, money doesn't exist to impress other people. It exists to buy peace of mind, options, and the ability to say no when it matters. The question Brad leaves us with isn't, how much do you make? It's this: if your income disappeared for 6 months, how long would your current life survive? And if that question makes you pause, then maybe your problem was never a lack of money at all.
Part 2. Saving is not an action, it's a habit. Most Americans think about saving as a conscious decision. I'll try to save more this month. I'll put money aside when there's extra. I'll figure it out at the end of the year. Brad Wire argues that this way of thinking is exactly why saving so often fails. Because saving isn't something you do when you still have energy. It's something that has to happen automatically, even when you're tired, busy, or unmotivated. Humans aren't great at long-term discipline, but we're very good at repeating habits. And personal finance, at its core, is a habit game, not a willpower game. Brad points out a familiar paradox. Many Americans aren't reckless spenders. They don't impulse buy. They're even very mindful about money. And yet, after years of working, their savings barely move. Not because they don't want to save, but because saving always comes last on the priority list. Money comes in, bills get paid, life happens, and whatever is left, if anything, gets called savings. In reality, that leftover almost never exists. Brad calls this the illusion of extra money. You always believe next month will be easier than this one. But next month, expenses grow, expectations rise, and once again you postpone saving to a future version of yourself, someone you hope will be more disciplined. Take an office worker in Denver. Stable salary, reasonable spending. Every month he tells himself, let's get past this holiday first. After Thanksgiving, after Christmas, after summer vacation, and suddenly a year has passed and his savings account looks almost exactly the same. Not because he's lazy, but because saving was never the default. Brad emphasizes that people who build wealth sustainably aren't good savers. They're people who don't give themselves the chance to spend all their money. They design systems that move money away before emotions ever get a say. Look at how many Americans contribute to a 401k. The money is automatically deducted before the paycheck hits the account. No thinking required, no monthly motivation needed. And that's why, 10 or 15 years later, so many people look back in surprise at how much they've accumulated, without ever feeling like they were sacrificing anything. Effective saving follows the same logic. Not, I'll save if there's money left this month, but I'm only allowed to live on what's left after I save. A young couple in North Carolina once told Brad they couldn't understand why saving always failed, even though they both had good intentions. Only when they set up an automatic transfer right after payday, even a very small amount, did things begin to change. Not because they earned more, but because they no longer had to decide. Brad calls this the difference between willpower and infrastructure. Willpower gets tired, systems don't. And here's the key. Saving doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to start early enough and repeat long enough. A small habit, sustained over many years, will always beat a big decision fueled by short-term motivation. Brad leaves us with a simple but uncomfortable question. If your saving depends on your mood and motivation each month, are you really serious about your financial future? Because freedom doesn't come from rare, brilliant decisions. It comes from ordinary habits repeated in a non-negotiable way. Part 3. Time more than money. When it comes to building wealth, Americans often ask a familiar question: how much money do I need to start? Brad Wire argues that this is the wrong question. The right question is, how early are you starting? Most people underestimate the power of time because time doesn't produce immediate results. It works quietly, slowly, and almost invisibly in the early years. But it's that very invisibility that creates massive differences later on. Brad points out that many Americans delay investing not because they don't understand it, but because they tell themselves, "I don't have enough money yet to make it worth it." They wait for a higher salary, they wait for less debt, they wait for life to feel more stable. And while they're waiting, the only thing they're losing is time, the one thing money can never buy back. Imagine two perfectly ordinary people. One starts investing at age 25, putting in just a few $100s a month. Nothing impressive, nothing flashy. The other waits until age 35, earns twice as much, and invests a much larger amount each month. On paper, the second person looks more serious, but over time, the first person often ends up ahead, simply because they gave their money an extra 10 years to work. This is what shocks many Americans when they finally see growth charts. It's not how much you invest each month that makes the biggest difference, it's how long your money is allowed to stay in the game. Brad emphasizes that money earned through labor is limited. You can only work so many hours, so many years. But invested money plays by different rules. Given enough time, it begins generating returns on its own returns, and at a certain point, growth depends less on you and more on time itself. Here's another scenario many Americans recognize. People delay investing because they're afraid of the market. They wait for a better time to get in. But Brad points out that over the long term, timing the market matters far less than time in the market. The winners aren't the ones who perfectly call the bottom, they're the ones who stay in the game. A tech worker in Seattle once shared that he always planned to invest next year, believing his salary would keep increasing. But next year always came with new reasons to delay: buying a home, having kids, rising expenses. When he finally looked back, his biggest regret wasn't the investments he got wrong, it was the years when he didn't invest at all. Brad isn't saying everyone has to start perfectly. He's saying that starting early with small steps is far more powerful than starting late with big ones. Time gives you room to make mistakes, to correct them, and still recover. The later you start, the more expensive every mistake becomes. You can earn money back, but you can never earn time back. Part 4. Consumer debt is a thief of the future. Consumer debt rarely enters your life with a loud crash. It arrives quietly. A credit card opened for convenience, a high-interest installment plan justified by a familiar phrase, "I deserve it." At first, it doesn't hurt, and because it doesn't hurt, it becomes dangerous. Brad Wire describes consumer debt as borrowing from your future time to feed your present emotions. You're not just borrowing money, you're borrowing months, even years of your future labor. In the US, consumer debt has become so normalized that many people no longer see it as a problem. Credit cards, buy now, pay later plans, 0% financing, all of it is designed to make spending feel lighter, detached from the pain of actually losing money. But Brad emphasizes that this very detachment is what causes people to underestimate the true cost. Consumer debt doesn't just take interest payments, it takes away options. When you carry debt, every major life decision becomes distorted. You hesitate to leave a job. You're afraid to try something new. You avoid smart risks, because every month those payments are already waiting. Think about a common example. A young family in Florida buys a new SUV with a long-term loan. The monthly payment isn't overwhelming, it's manageable. But that very manageability stretches on for years, keeping them in a constant state of low-level stress. Not because of the car itself, but because they've locked their financial future into an emotional decision. Brad points out a painful paradox. Consumer debt is often justified in the name of comfort, yet the end result is less freedom. You may live in a house full of things, but your mind is constantly occupied by bills. You may look like you're doing well, while inside you feel perpetually chased. Another example,
A young professional in Chicago uses credit cards to build a professional image, better clothes, nicer meals, a lifestyle that matches his peers. But when his paycheck arrives, most of it already belongs to someone else. It doesn't make him poor, it makes him stuck. Brad doesn't deny that debt can be a tool, but he draws a sharp line between debt that builds the future and consumer debt that feeds illusions. When you borrow money for things that don't create long-term value, you place the burden on a future version of yourself, a version that was never asked for permission. And here's the most painful part. Consumer debt steals time, the very asset we just said is the most valuable. Every dollar of interest you pay today is a dollar that can't be invested in tomorrow's freedom.
Part 5. Rewards points and good deals won't make you rich. Many Americans believe they're being smart with money because they know how to maximize reward points, coupons, cash back, and those can't-miss deals. Every swipe that earns cash back, every item bought below retail price creates the feeling that they've just beaten the system. Brad Weir calls this the illusion of saving. Technically, you might be right. You really are saving a few percentage points, but the real problem lies elsewhere. You're spending more in order to feel like you're saving, and that's a deeply subtle psychological trap. Brad points out that rewards programs aren't designed to make you wealthy. They're designed to make you spend more often, spend faster, and hesitate less. When spending is paired with rewards, your brain stops asking the most important question: do I actually need this? Think of a familiar example. Someone in Los Angeles chooses a more expensive flight just because it offers double points. On paper, he wins. His points balance goes up. In reality, he paid more for the exact same trip. The points don't offset that decision. Or take a family in Ohio that buys a new TV on Black Friday because it's 40% off. But without the sale, they wouldn't have bought anything at all. The savings only exist because the spending was created first. Brad emphasizes that rewards and deals often cause people to swap the wrong question in. Instead of asking, "Should I buy this at all?" they ask, "Where can I buy this for the best deal?" And once the question is wrong, even the most logical answer leads you in the wrong direction. What makes this even more dangerous is that these purchases rarely feel painful. Each decision is small. Each one feels reasonable. Each one has a justification. But over time, they quietly erode your ability to save and invest, like a slow leak in a massive ship. Brad isn't saying you should avoid rewards programs entirely. He's emphasizing a clear rule. Rewards only matter after you've already decided to make the purchase, not when they create the decision. People who build lasting wealth don't accumulate it by chasing deals. They do it by buying less, choosing more deliberately, and letting their money work instead of chasing short-term rewards.
Part 6. A home is not just an asset, it's a long-term commitment. In the U.S., homeownership is often treated as a rite of passage. Buying a home as early as possible is repeated as default advice, from family, friends, to financial experts on television. Brad Weir doesn't deny the value of owning a home, but he raises a question most people don't want to hear. Are you buying an asset or signing up for a commitment that will shape your life for decades? The problem isn't the house itself, it's how people think about it. When housing is viewed purely as an investment, it's easy to overlook the very real consequences: monthly cash flow, maintenance costs, property taxes, insurance, and most importantly, the freedom you're trading away. Brad points out that many Americans buy homes based on what they're approved to borrow, not what they're comfortable living with.
The bank tells you you qualify for a large loan, and you assume that means you should buy at that level. But the bank isn't the one living with the pressure every month. You are. Consider a young couple in Arizona. They buy a larger home than they currently need because we'll need it later. On paper, it sounds reasonable. In reality, every month becomes a balancing act. High mortgage payments, delayed investing, and a constant feeling of running just to keep up. The house doesn't make them poor overnight, it makes them locked in. Brad emphasizes that a home is a very unique form of leverage. It's both shelter and obligation. Unlike stocks or investment funds, you can't sell part of your house when things get tight. You carry the entire commitment, no matter how your income or life circumstances change. Here's another familiar scenario. Someone in California wants to move to another state for a better career opportunity, but is held back by a mortgage. Not because the new job isn't good, but because the cost of leaving is too high. A past home buying decision quietly sets boundaries on the future. Brad isn't saying renting is better than owning or owning is better than renting. He's saying that buying a home should be a lifestyle decision first and a financial decision second. If a house forces you into constant stress, sacrifices your ability to save, and closes doors to opportunity, then it's costing more than it gives. People who approach housing in a healthy way tend to ask very different questions. Will this payment let me sleep at night? If my income drops, can I still manage? Does this home expand or restrict my options over the next 10 years? Brad closes with a simple but heavy truth. A house may appreciate in value, but the pressure it creates also grows every single month. And the question left for each of us is this: are you buying a place to live or signing a contract that binds your future?
Part 7. Retirement isn't just for old people. In the US, retirement is often pushed far out of young people's minds. It's associated with gray hair, rocking chairs, and a life that happens someday. Brad Wire argues that this way of thinking is one of the biggest financial mistakes people make. Because retirement isn't an age, it's a state of freedom. When you're young, retirement feels irrelevant. You have bills to pay, careers to build, families to support. So retirement gets postponed with familiar phrases. I'll deal with it later. I have plenty of time. I'll think about it when I earn more. But Brad points to a cold truth. Every year you don't invest toward retirement is a year you quietly reduce your future options. Not because you'll never retire, but because you're handing the timing of that decision over to circumstance. Someone in their 30s in the US might think that contributing a few $100s to a retirement account is too small to make a difference. Brad emphasizes that retirement isn't built through big leaps, it's built through consistency and time. That consistency, combined with compound growth, creates results that are hard to imagine in the early years. Picture two co-workers the same age in Boston. One starts contributing to a 401k from their very first job, even at the minimal level. The other decides to wait until life feels more stable. 10 years later, the first person doesn't feel like they sacrificed anything, but their account has built a foundation the second person has to work much harder to catch up to. Brad also points out that delaying retirement saving is often justified by the feeling that it's far away, but that distance makes people underestimate the true cost. Starting late doesn't just mean contributing more later, it often means taking on more risk to make up for lost time. Here's another familiar scenario. Many Americans enter their 50s at the highest income level of their lives, yet in their most fragile financial position. They can't afford major market risks, they can't afford big mistakes, and they don't have enough time to recover.
Not because they lack intelligence, but because they started too late. Brad emphasizes that retirement isn't just about money, it's about choice. The choice to keep working because you want to, not because you have to. The choice to slow down when your health demands it. The choice to spend time with family without being haunted by income. And that's why retirement isn't a problem for old people. It's a story written by the decisions you're making right now. Brad closes with a direct question. Are you building a future where you have choices, or one where you're forced to adapt? Because the best time to think about retirement is always earlier than you expect.
Part 8. An emergency fund keeps you from self-destruction. Most serious financial mistakes don't start with stupid decisions. They start with unexpected situations. Brad Weir argues that an emergency fund doesn't exist to make you rich. It exists to keep you from destroying everything you've already built. In the US, many people have stable incomes, investments, and long-term plans. But all it takes is one small disruption, a job loss, a medical bill, car repairs, home repairs, and the entire system collapses. Not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack a buffer. Brad calls an emergency fund the breathing room of personal finance. Without it, every setback turns into a crisis. You're forced to pull investments at the worst possible time, swipe high-interest credit cards, or make decisions you'll regret long after the situation has passed. Think of a familiar example. A worker in Michigan gets his hours cut for a few months. Without an emergency fund, he relies on credit cards to cover basic expenses. At first, it feels temporary, but within months, accumulating debt turns a short-term disruption into a long-term problem. Brad emphasizes that an emergency fund isn't a sign of pessimism, it's a sign of realism. Life doesn't follow perfect plans, and once you accept that, you stop hoping things will work out and start preparing for when they don't. Here's another example. A family in Washington has investments, but they also keep a separate pool of cash for bad situations. When the husband suddenly loses his job, they don't panic, not because they're wealthy, but because they have time. And time is the most valuable resource when you need to make clear-headed decisions. Brad also points out a powerful but invisible benefit of an emergency fund: calm. When you know you can survive a few months without making desperate moves, you make better choices. You don't accept a bad job out of fear. You don't sell assets in a panic. According to Brad, the exact number isn't what matters most. 3 months, 6 months, more, it depends on your situation. What matters is that this fund is reserved strictly for true emergencies, not temporary wants or emotional spending. Brad closes with a simple truth: an emergency fund won't help you move faster, but it will keep you from moving backward.
Part 9. Money should serve your life, not social pressure. Very few of our financial decisions are made in silence. They're made under other people's eyes, amid stories of success and within invisible standards society quietly sets. Brad Weir argues that one of the biggest reasons Americans struggle with money isn't because they don't know better, it's because they're living by someone else's standards. That pressure is rarely obvious. It arrives subtly. A coworker buys a new car, a friend moves into a bigger house, a family you know posts a luxury vacation on social media, and slowly you begin adjusting your expectations, not because you truly want to, but because you're afraid of falling behind. Brad points out how easily money becomes a tool for proving personal worth. You buy things that make other people think you're doing well, even while you're stressed on the inside. You accept financial commitments beyond your capacity, not because they improve your life, but because they help you look like you're okay. Here's a familiar example. A family in New Jersey lives in a house larger than they truly need, simply because everyone does.
From the outside, they look successful. On the inside, every month feels like pressure math. No one sees the sleepless nights, they only see the facade. Brad emphasizes that the problem isn't wanting more. That's human. The problem is not being clear about what actually matters to you. Without that clarity, it's easy to let society decide for you. People who truly control their money aren't the ones who spend the least. They're the ones who spend intentionally on what brings meaning to their lives and don't feel the need to justify it to anyone. They don't chase appearances. They build lives aligned with their values. Brad believes money is at its best when it becomes quiet, when it's no longer a constant source of anxiety, when it stops controlling your career choices, your relationships, or your sleep. That's when money returns to its proper role, a tool that serves your life, not a measure of your worth.
Part 10. The ultimate purpose of money is choice. If you strip away all the numbers, charts, and technical advice, Brad Weir believes money has only one true purpose: choice. Not flashy wealth, not winning comparisons with others, but the ability to say yes or no to life on your own terms. Many Americans believe money brings happiness. Brad argues that money doesn't create happiness directly, it creates space. Space to leave a toxic job, space to be present for family when it matters, space to avoid making life-defining decisions from a place of fear. When you don't have money, every choice becomes distorted. You don't choose what's best, you choose what's least bad. You don't dare to try. You don't dare to wait. You don't dare to say no. And over time, it's not the lack of money itself that exhausts people, it's the lack of options. Brad says many people he meets aren't poor at all. They have solid incomes and real assets. Yet they live feeling trapped because their money is tied up in too many commitments: debt, fixed expenses, and social expectations. They have money, but they don't have choice. On the other hand, people with true financial freedom often don't look impressive on the surface, but they possess something powerful: time and calm. They can slow down, they can wait, they can say no to what doesn't fit without immediate fear of consequences. Brad emphasizes that building money the right way isn't about spending more, it's about being forced less. Less forced to stay in work you hate, less forced to remain where you've outgrown, less forced to live out someone else's script. And so, the ultimate goal of money isn't the number you reach at the end of your life. It's the feeling you carry throughout the journey. The feeling that your life isn't locked in by financial decisions made years ago. Brad closes with a quiet but heavy question. If tomorrow you had complete freedom of choice, what would you change first in your life? Because money, at its best, isn't what makes you stand out. It's what allows you to live more honestly as yourself, day by day. No one teaches us about money in a complete way from the very beginning. We learn through mistakes, through pressure, through years of asking ourselves why we did so many things right and still ended up feeling exhausted. 10 Things Nobody Told Me About Money doesn't give you a get-rich-quick formula. It gives you something far more valuable: a clear, grounded way of seeing money so it no longer quietly controls your life. If the previous parts made you nod more than once, this is a book worth slowing down for, reflecting on, and applying in a way that fits your own situation. I've placed the link to the book in the description below for anyone who wants to go deeper into the ideas Brad Weir shares. And if you found this content valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a healthier perspective on money right now.